Good morning to the international admissions community joining in from the US, and good evening to all my fellow colleagues here in India. Thank you for the panelists and attendees and audience for joining us on this very important day here today. We have once again overwhelmed by the response we've received for attending this session, and we truly thank you for your kind time and support in joining us today. Thank you very much for taking the time. Also, as many of you know, Knowledge at KPT is a free platform created with the purpose of fostering discussion and sharing of information between diverse stakeholders of the US higher education community, such as US universities and colleges, and guidance counselors and other thought-minded leaders who are passionate about promoting the concept of US higher education. On that note, I would like to begin our webinar today, The Road Ahead for Indian Students and High School Guidance Counselors for Fall 2021 Undergraduate Admissions, by introducing our wonderful panelists who have taken the time to share their expert insights with us. To begin with, I'd like to kindly introduce the esteemed panelists, and we'll start with an alphabetical order. We have Ms. Lily Nair from the International School of Hyderabad. And Ms. Lily, if you can quickly say hello. ISH is a school that caters primarily to the expat population in Hyderabad. ISH follows an international curriculum right through, with an emphasis in IGCSE in 9th and 10th grade and IBDP in 11th and 12th grade. And second, we have Ms. Prasija Nambiar from Stonehill International School. Stonehill is an 11-year-old K-12 international school located in a plush countryside near Bangalore International Airport. Stonehill International School offers IB curriculum throughout the school, and it is one of the very few schools to have achieved the IBCIS and NEASC accreditation. Stonehill is also a proud member of ERCOS, EARCOS, and most of the faculty and administration and facilitators are very proud and are very passionate about IB learning at their school. And the student body consists of 37 nationalities with a faculty of over 20 nationalities. There are about 600 students in terms of the high school population, and the graduating class is about 47 this year. Students apply to 22 countries from across the world. And last but not the very least, we have Ms. Sumitra RN from Inventure Academy, Bangalore. Inventure Academy is one of India's top 10 co-educational day schools, established in 2005. The school offers pre-kindergarten to grade 12. The school is affiliated both with Indian and international boards and offers the Council of International Certificate Examination, which is CISCE, in grades 10 and 11, with a parallel group of students taking the IGCSE. And established in 2005, Stonehill is very well known in Bangalore for its focus on academic excellence, and has been a tradition and has a great tradition of student and career development of their 11th, 12th grade and their entire student body. So special thanks to our panelists for their contribution to our webinar series. We will also be having a few polls to all the attendees during the course of our webinar, so please be sure on the lookout of the same. At the end of the session, we'll be sharing the email addresses of all the panelists who have joined us today, so you may directly get in touch with them and continue these wonderful conversations that we're going to be having today. And last but not the very least, we'll be having a quick survey at the end, so please be on the lookout for the same, and we hope you can participate in that. That brings me to my first question for the day, and I'm going to start off with Ms. Lily Nair. The first question for today is, what are some of the core concerns students and parents are having and you as guidance counselors are having as students prepare to enter their 12th grade? In specific, what are some of the challenges and even opportunities coming your way? Thank you.
Thank you, Kunal. It's an honor to be invited to be present on this panel. Thank you also to all the university representatives. It's great having you for this discussion. Well, I come from a very small international school with about 400 plus students, and our high school is just about 100 odd students. So the concerns that we face, I'm sure, is common to all these schools, anywhere in the world. There is definitely a lot of apprehension among students, parents, and of course, us counselors as to what the future is going to look like for these students who would apply for for fall 2021. As you all know, there have been a lot of changes in the educational landscape as well, right from mid-March when we in India went into lockdown. We started remote learning at that point of time, and it continued till about mid-June. Now, at that point, we all thought, this is going to be a short-term thing. And then once the new academic year starts, it's going to be back to normal. But right now, that doesn't seem to be in the case. And of course, the apprehension has become, much more than it was in the early days of the year. So perhaps one of the biggest concerns is, how do these students, what are the chances like for fall 21, given the fact that they have been on remote learning for a very long time and will continue to do so perhaps right through the first semester of their senior year. They've been deprived of a lot of things, not just, face-to-face classes, in a physical setup, but also, taking part in extracurricular activities, getting opportunities to showcase leadership, taking part in service initiatives. All of this contributes to the holistic development of their individual personalities. So when they are, when they talk about admissions to universities, and when universities talk about holistic development, how is this going to impact their chances in 2021? And this is perhaps the overriding concern of all the students. Having said that, I must say that, in any kind of adverse situation, I think it's, we as humans always rise up to challenges. And, they have been involved in a lot of virtual activities, which has been quite incredible and quite meaningful. So it's not a totally lost case, but the experience is definitely different, and it has reshaped them in ways that they would have never thought before. So I think this is pretty much common to all schools, and I'm sure some of my colleagues on the panel would also agree with me.
Ms. Prasija, thank you.
I would second Miss Lily, because exactly the same kind of, feeling that we were running through. And now coming from a school which is, populated with expat students, we had additional challenges that we faced was, our students had to go back to their countries, which also caused them, so we don't know what sort of a family situation and what sort of a personal situation they are battling while they are attending virtual classes. Second, I think our students have been very resilient, because some of our students have gone back to Netherlands and some have gone back to Germany, and they're up quite early in the morning to have a class that starts in India at 8 a.m. in the morning. So I guess students have been very, very resilient. And I think teachers have also kept them engaged with bringing up a variety of, online learning resources. Yes, we cannot replace the, feeling of coming to school, meeting, the friends and having a nice meal together, or chatting on the, alongside the corridor. All of these things we cannot. These are, memories that they are going to cherish. So yes, they are deprived of a lot of, memories that they would have otherwise cherished. But absolutely right. Our senior school students have been very, very, they adapted to the whole situation very quickly, with some of our students even coming out in the streets and helping students with COVID, setting up camps for them and helping them, give out foods and working with government agencies. For the other kids who wanted to stay, entertained. So the Student Council generally does a talent show towards the end of the year, and they do a lot of fundraisers throughout the year to run the talent show. And everything went for a toss when the school closed in March. So the students turned the whole talent show into a virtual talent show. So it was like a TV show that they did, and it was really put together. A lot of effort had gone. And I think some of the students, because we have a very thriving student support system at the school. So we have a team of student counselors and psychological counselors who take care of students in terms of mental well-being and holistic, feeling good factor, all of those things. And we understand that turning them from physical learning space to an online space can be very daunting. It can be, children can get anxious, parents can get anxious. So I think our student support system was probably our frontliners who stood up and who took care of all the students who were with EAL, English as second language, students who are doing mother tongue language, students who have learning differences, and gifted students. So I think our student support system, the team really stood up and did a splendid job. So yes, there are pros and cons of the whole situation, but as Ms. Lily said, it has reshaped them into ways that we had never imagined. And speaking of what my 2021 class is looking like, I think they probably are not as anxious now, because they kind of have got used to the idea that, okay, it's going to be online. We have to, we have to study the way it is, and we're going to make the best of what is available to us. So, and they're very hopeful also. They're very hopeful, and they're like, maybe by the time we are ready to go to college, things are going to be stabilized. So even if it's learning with social distancing or classes not running at a full capacity, we're still hopeful that we will get, a learning that we will remember for our lives. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And Ms. Soumitra, from our challenges and if opportunities point of view, what are you seeing with your students and of course the counseling community? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kunal. I moved to Inventure recently, 2 months back. So I used to work with Greenwood High School, an IB school in Bangalore. And now in Inventure, where the A-level curriculum and ISC is the grade 11 and 12 curriculum, right? So few challenges, if you see, the grade 11 final exam was a big challenge for our students, because for the teachers, designing such kind of questions where it's very unique, and the kind of answers which comes up, it's a very formative assessment and things like that. That was a challenge for the teachers, and yes, it was done successfully. And the tradition of Inventure, where we do inventoring when the school opens, because we closed down in April, and after that we opened recently last month. Where inventoring, it's a week event where students participate in different kind of projects once the school opens for a week, and so that the new students are more comfortable with the environment and things like that. And inventoring completely was virtual, and that was a different challenge for the students and teachers who design different activities for the students. So there are a list of challenges definitely which we are facing with the virtual environment. Obviously the parents, the panic which is existing amongst the parents, especially the 2021 batch parents, right? There are lots of questions in their mind, though we are answering the questions, taking time and speaking to them, but still the confusions and questions, they stay to continue with the current situation, because the numbers are not coming down, and when the school will be opening, there are lots of uncertainties on place, right? So there are lots of challenges, but on a positive side, there are good things as well going on. To answer the question, the opportunities which have come across us, right? So usually during a school time, it's very hard for a school like Inventure, where we are really academic-oriented, to accommodate the university visits. But now, because there are lots of free sessions which I arrange with the students, which if it was on a usual working day, weekly, I could have done just one, not more than that, right? Because there is lots of academic schedule which the children follow, and academic periods which they follow. So to get that time, it could have been even more difficult. At the same time, the session with parents, the awareness sessions which I'm doing with parents. So those kind of opportunities which have come across, definitely that is there. And other than that, I would also say the support amongst the students, where they have formed a group and, acknowledging the juniors, the batch of 2020, they're acknowledging the batch of 2021, and, supporting them completely and things like that. So these are some of the opportunities which have come across in this current virtual environment. So, but otherwise, I totally agree with the points discussed by Ms. Lily and Ms. Presija both. Yes.
Yes, thank you so much for a very exhaustive answer. We truly appreciate your points to the first question. So let's move to the second question for the day. For fall 2021 admissions in specific, what are the students' and parents' opinions on mobility to and outside of the US? Are you seeing many students still saying that US is our primary destination? As you know, many international schools across India, if you do, as you know, when we go into these schools, many students have the US as their first point of preference. And so are you seeing that for fall 2020 still being the same because of all the changing factors that you mentioned? Or is an emerging trend, or a pulse emerging for destination maybe perhaps closer to home like Dubai or Singapore? Just some things that we've been hearing. But what would be your thoughts on the ground? What are you seeing in terms of student mobility for fall 2021? Thank you.
So I'd like to answer that. There are two ways to look at it. One, it's very school specific. I mean, it's very student specific, and so there are factors that are within the student's control to make a decision, and there are students which are, external factors which are not in the student's control and which can lead to a certain decision making. I can speak for a lot of IB schools in India, or at least from my perspective, we were never a pro any country, we were never a pro US or a pro Canada or a pro UK. We were never like that. So our students apply to 22 countries across the globe, and primary filter or the reason why they choose any university is absolutely, one, because of the course that they want to study. Second is a faculty, the kind of environment that they're in within the campus. So a lot of, in my opinion, the teenagers, 17, 18-year-olds, for them what matters is am I going to be, is my social life going to get affected because of, ABC situation? Is my, will I get an internship? Will I lose out on the networking opportunities through the university? Am I going to be in a class that is still so diverse? So they're looking for all international diversity when they're going to universities. So these are things that my students have been looking at, and hence the country and the political climate of the country really has an effect, but it doesn't have a major effect that way. So yes, in my opinion, I have not seen a trend change that, okay, students, or a sharp decline in the percentage of the students applying to the US, or nothing of that sort, because I have, this is my, fourth batch and third batch I'm working with Stonil, and I've only seen the numbers increasing. So with the volatility that exists, in the US system at this point of time, I don't see that kind of percolating into the student admissions at this point, because they're really looking at, one, the course, the second, the faculty, the support system that is provided, the engagement that the university is providing. So this is what the student's perspective is. Now coming back to parents, I'm blessed to have a parent body who says that I'm okay with what my students do. There are people who are, well traveled, have expat population, have lived abroad, so they kind of understand how things can be difficult when you move into a different country. So for them, transition into university is not as big a challenge as it would be for any other Indian student moving abroad that way. So yes, in my opinion, I don't see the mobility trend changing, especially with respect to the US. I don't see that coming a sharp decline, at least, in the near future. No, I don't see that happening. Yes, the other countries have definitely picked up, because of their newly released stay back options, or, shorter courses or things like that. But I think the US dream still is there. Yeah.
Absolutely, that's wonderful. And Ms. Soumitra, what are you seeing, from your view as a guidance counselor?
Yeah. So Inventure is a school where there are lots of US citizens, right? So the batch of 2020, when I was going through the placements, there are many US citizens who have applied to US as the primary choice, and then followed by UK and Canada, and Asian countries, few, in Australia. But majority, the 80% of the cohort applies to US, and then most of them, they are not decided to defer. Those very few of them, very limited number of students who have decided to defer for a year, right? I'm hearing, but from outside, that there is a drop in US applications, and or is change in decisions from the students and parents. I'm hearing it from different people outside, but frankly, from my perspective and from the students, what I'm hearing from my students, I don't see there is a change in their thought, or what their decision has been. Even with the batch of 2021, I'm seeing majority of them, US is still the primary choice for them, though the difference is they have come up with planning to keep a backup option in India along with the US applications for the 2021 intake. That they have decided, which were not their plan initially. They are keeping some backup options in India, which they are planning to apply, but US still continues to be the primary choice, followed by Canada, Australia, UK, a few European countries, I would say. But yes, US is still the first choice for them in Inventure. Yes.
Absolutely. And Ms. Lily, what are you seeing, in terms of your international student body, and particularly your Indian students? What are they seeing? Is still US the primary option, or are you seeing something different? Thank you. I think you are muted.
Muted.
Yes.
I think the response would be the same as what Prasija and Soumitra have said. Most of our students are also US citizens, so natural tendency to look towards the United States for higher education. However, there are, for the first time, there are students who are actually looking at the possibility of taking a gap year, and that seems to be much more attractive right now, given the world conditions. Additionally, I think there is also a greater interest in looking at Europe and Singapore, but it's a very small minority. I think they're willing to take the risks, whether it is starting the session with remote learning. So US is definitely the most favored choice.
Right, absolutely. And moving to the next point. I mean, thank you for sharing your points. Moving to the next point, let's get to the financial implications, because we often hear parents, there have been a lot of financial developments, as you know, in India. The rupee has significantly depreciated, almost lost 10% of its value in a span of a month or so. We're obviously seeing many families, unfortunately, lose their jobs, their business. The stock market, as you know, in India has crashed, which of course has an impact on savings and investment. So from a financial point of view, what are some of the financial implications that your students are seeing? And again, just to kindly ask you, I ask you this, of course, from a fall 2021 perspective, and also in terms of your Indian student body. I mean, or students from other countries, like what are some of the opinions that they're having, and that you can share? What are some of the things that you're hearing? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kunal. So yes, I would say there are lots of questions amongst parents and students about this. Even during our earlier discussion, Ms. Prasija had brought up this point. So regarding scholarship, because most of them are US citizens, obviously they tend to look for financial aid from the universities because they're eligible to apply for financial aid, right? So there is a confusion, and the question amongst them that with the current given situation, will the financial aid, the kind of amount given by the university will be the same as how it was earlier for a batch of 2020, the kind of money which has been given by the universities, or for a batch of 2019 or 2018, what kind of money they have been giving? Will that continue the same way, or will there be a change with the current given situation, right? Because things are unpredictable. Then obviously about the merit scholarship, there have been universities who automatically give certain amount of merit scholarship to most of the students who are admitted, and based on the grades and things like that, based on test scores and different other parameters, right? So will that continue for this coming this year 2020 for the 2021 intake? That's a main question amongst many parents and many students. So that continues to be a confusion and question amongst the parents while shortlisting the universities or having the names in the list, whether I should be applying to this school, whether will this be really hard for me to go ahead, and will they be giving the money which I expect, right, based on the financial aid calculator, which I expect to get, and this kind of questions. Yes.
Right, absolutely. Go ahead, Miss Prasija.
Yeah, so just like Soumitra said, we have students coming from different parts of the globe. So mostly everybody is technically an international candidate when they apply to US universities, which again, they want to know what is the status with the scholarship before deciding on whether should I apply to this university or not. And increasingly for the current batch, the rising seniors, my students have started filtering universities based on tuition fee, because they know that international scholarships and financial aid are very minimum, and we have to write to the university and apply for a scholarship separately, and the chances are very slim. So students have started filtering university based on tuition fee and possible scholarship opportunities. My students are also looking for third-party scholarships which will fund their education in the university if they're looking at US. So these are certain things that my students have definitely started looking at. The ones who are not applying to the US are genuinely looking at cost-effective options. Having said that, I don't see anyone in my class keeping a backup in Indian universities. Indian universities tend to be way cheaper, but because given the calendar, Indian calendar, the Indian admissions calendar and the US admissions calendar is too different, and the IB exams are right in the middle of all the entrances that take place in India. So that is one reason my students are not really keeping an Indian backup. Hence, it becomes even more important for them to look out for third-party scholarships or enhanced scholarship opportunities, whether it's merit or financial aid, from the university. So they are actively reaching out to universities. They're writing to them. They want to know more, so they're connecting with people to see what best they can be offered. Yeah.
Right. And Miss Lily, in terms of you, what are you hearing from your Indian students? And I know you have students from other parts of the world as well. What are you hearing in terms of student body? Thank you. I think you're muted, Miss Lily. Thank you.
Yeah, again, it's pretty much the same. So I won't repeat myself. Finance is definitely a concern, but they do not want to look anywhere else apart from the United States. So they will obviously be looking for as much of aid as can be given at that point of time. But the concern is unanimous everywhere. I mean, it seems to be overriding amongst all stakeholders.
Right, of course. Thank you so much for those viewpoints. I'm going to move into to the next question in terms of our discussion, which is, we're hearing a lot of students having a number of questions saying, as an entering 12th grade student, would my admissions be impacted, or will admissions be next year more competitive for 2021? The international admissions, as many students this year who are the class of 2020 are deferring. There are also questions coming up, in terms of which classes should you take in high school to prepare for college. How will my extracurriculars and community service, of course, has been impacted because of, the lockdown here in India. We are also hearing, questions on guidance counselors having questions on admission deposit deadlines, deferrals, and wait lists for next year, or even early action and early decision as counselors and students begin their planning for next year. So what are some of the things that you are hearing? What are some of these questions that are coming up? What are some of the changing factors or questions that are coming your way, the big questions and the big as they say, the big points that are coming your way in terms of next year that students are asking you? Thank you.
Is it who's addressing this question?
We can begin with you, Miss Lily. That's fine.
Okay, fine. So with regards to the extracurricular activities, I think someone else had mentioned that students are very resilient. So a lot of them have already adapted to the virtual situation. There are a lot of students who've enrolled for summer courses that are virtual. They've also enrolled into free courses offered by platforms such as Harvard, Coursera, just to sort of enhance their application, their resume, and I think they've sort of kept a list of activities over this summer break, which is again much shorter than what it would normally be, in order to ensure that they have the best possible chances for 2021 despite everything that has happened. So I think that's a huge positive, and that trend will continue as we move on into the academic year. And the same thing goes for service. As Soumitra had mentioned earlier, there was a lot of opportunity to get involved with, fundraising activities in India, for example, for the migrant laborers, providing food and essential equipment. So a lot of students did get actively involved in that. And I think that's something great to sort of to participate in. So they would have definitely a lot of stories to tell, a lot of points to sort of represent in their application.
Right, absolutely. Ms. Prasija, are students asking you questions that, ma'am, will my admissions be impacted, or will be more competitive for next year in terms of, with many students deferring? Are students asking those kind of questions, or in terms of, many other admission and scholarship factors? If you could kindly share. Thank you.
So my students, nobody is differing. So everybody is going to college, whether it's virtual or not virtual. Students are eager to attend college. So that has kind of rubbed off with the grade 11, the D1 students also. So they are also very hopeful, and they say, okay, we are also going to learn, because that's what's more important for them. Coming back to questions, yes, there are tons of questions that they are asking about. One, with the universities changing, making the policies very relaxed and flexible for the application. They seem to see that, ma'am, more number of students are applying now. Many of them will apply. The ones who would not have otherwise been eligible for this course, because of ABC factors, are also going to apply. So does that make my application at a disadvantage? Does that put me at a disadvantage in any way? Am I going to be in a much stronger pool because now there are more, more intangibles that the university is going to look into? So those are some questions. Yes, there are certain students who are applying to the high selective universities, and yes, there in not in our school, but in India, yes, there have been cases where they have deferred to the next year and things like that. So they're like, ma'am, overall, the curve looks like there have been many deferrals. That, so will I again have to compete with students who already did hold an offer from the high selective universities? Am I again going to be at a disadvantage? What are the things that I can do? So these are questions that they are asking. They're not really shying away, but they want to give it a try, and a full attempt. They want to go ahead and try what best we can do. But yes, with the social distancing and with the strict government regulations, students have very limited access to job shadowing or internships or summer programs. They don't find value in summer programs now because the cost is not reduced and it is virtual. So they have kind of sort of refrained from doing that as well. So yes, there have been a lot of limitations in the extracurriculars or overall profile building, but that's only one part of it. We start career guidance in ninth itself, from when the student enters high school. And due to our MYP program, service is an essential component of their curriculum. So it's not that they've never done service at all. They've done service for the last 3 years, and it's just one summer that they're missing out on the service. So what our students have done is, we have around 18 service partners with our school. So our students have taken turns because of the social distancing. Everybody cannot go. So they have turns, and they have still tried to contribute in their own little way. And they're not doing it because it has to be shown on the university application portal or something, but they're doing it generally because they feel the need. And the class of 2021 is I don't know, they're so united that they want to do something, and they all go and do that. So that way, everybody just, they're very proactive. They say, okay, I'm going to go to this place, you're going to go to this place, let's figure out how that works out. So even if they're in different countries, they're still continuing that through their smaller initiatives, smaller attempt, baby steps. So the experiences are profound, but the magnitude is of the scale of the organization or anything is small, but I think their involvement is very, very high. So I think that's more important, and how we reflect on it is more important. So I only see the positives in that. Yes, with the limitations, our students have tried what they could do. And I think now they're in a sort of better space because they also feel confident. When they look back on what they have done for the last 2-3 years, they feel confident that, okay, I'm not going to college empty-handed. I have built these skills over the years. So they are able to talk about it. They're able to reflect on it. So I feel, more positives than negatives. So yeah.
That's so nice to hear, Ms. Prasija. And Ms. Soumitra, what are you hearing in terms of impact of admissions for next year? Are you hearing questions about student faculty ratio? How might that be affected because of social distancing measures? What are some of the questions that are coming your way? Thank you.
Yeah. So yes, as Ms. Lily and Ms. Prasija rightly said, there are questions and confusions amongst the parents and students with the given scenario and situation. Though universities have come up with test optional policies, it I would say, in fact, has increased some kind of confusion amongst the parent body and amongst the student body. Those children who have already given SATs, have scored a 1560 or 1580 out of 1600. They are feeling, will my score really matter? There are going to be many students who are going to apply the test optional policy. At the same time, there are children who think, even though the university have come up with the test optional policy, are they really not going to look at the test scores, right? So is it that they are really not going to consider? So if I'm not given test SAT till now, can I still go ahead and apply? is my application going to be fine, right? Those kind of questions are still there amongst the parents and students, even though we explain that when a university says a test optional or test flexible policy, they are really open to that. If you don't report this course, they are not going to consider it as a part of your application, right? Even though if we mention it, it's still going to be there, it's still there. And about the activities and those kind of questions, which I would say, though they have done many activities from grade 9 onwards, many students have planned for lots of rigorous research-based activities in their grade 11 summer, especially with associations like NCBS, people who are in touch with professor, biology research, and those kind of things, which cannot be done with the flexibility at home, right? So with IASC, the professors whom they have been in touch with for 1 year in grade 11 and the summer, they have planned for such kind of research. Those are at hold right now, and those are a bit of challenge, and they have questions that I planned for such an activity, a next level activity in my grade 11 summer, which I couldn't do. So when a university is saying that it's going to be test optional, and even though they are going to look at all the activities which I've done, still that rigor of the activity which I planned for myself because I'm interested in this subject, I did not get a chance to do it. So how the university is going to look at it, and how can I express this to the university, right? So this kind of questions are also there. And obviously, as I told you about the scholarship and about the money things, those questions are continuing, and we are discussing it with the parents and students. It is going on. So this is what I'm hearing from the students and parents from the question perspective for the admissions of 2021. Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I think that helps us to segue into our next part about test optional policies and how students, parents, and guidance counselors are viewing them. But before we get that to that, let's launch a quick poll so the attendees can engage in this session as well. This is a commonly question that you will see on your screens asked by guidance counselors. And we request all the attendees to please vote. Would admission deferrals this year impact admissions and scholarship at your institution for fall 2021? And it will really help us get a really good opinion. We have a really good number of attendees who are presenting, who are participating in our session today. So I'm going to wait for another quick 10 to 15 seconds to allow everyone to vote. And then, of course, once you voted, I'll be declaring and sharing the results. Thank you. So I'm going to wait for another quick 5 seconds before we end this poll. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and the poll has closed right now. I'm of course going to be sharing the results. I hope everyone can see the results, and of course the guidance counselors themselves can see. An overwhelming 62% have said no, about 5%, 14% have said yes, and about 24% have said maybe, as I'm sure they formulate their policies for next year. So I'm going to stop sharing that. And of course, I'm going to be moving on to the next question, which we discussed earlier, was about test optional policies. So my question is, as test optional policies become more and more common among US institutions, how are your students viewing these test optional policies by colleges? How is this impacting students and parents' college search process for fall 2021 intake? Is this leading to more confusion where some institutions are saying test optional, some are test blind, some are test flexible? How are Indian students and their families relating this to the admissions process? Because, Indian students sometimes are relating the SAT and the ACT to the value of the university, as you know, and as we discussed earlier. So what are your views on this? Ms. Prasija, if you could kindly begin, that will be great. Thank you.
So I can speak from an international student's perspective and an Indian student perspective both. For my students, they are happy that a lot of universities have gone test optional, and so they don't rate a university based on the acceptance rate. So that way, I have a very positive response. However, the students who are serious about going to US, the students who are serious about looking at the selective universities and good universities, and their best fit universities, where they're serious about it, they're actively reaching out to the universities, writing to them, asking them about how does this impact the admissions, and the university officers have been really, really supportive and coming out with great advice. You being one of them, Kunal. So that way, thank you so much. So yes, I don't see my students are not really paranoid about that oh my god, test optional and things like that. But the ones who are serious are still going to take the SATs. The ones who are serious have already done the SATs or the ACTs. So they have a solid score in hand. So they are saying, the students are of the opinion that I have a good score, I'm going to report it, and it's up to the admissions whether they use it, for evaluation or not. I have a holistic profile. So they're very confident in the way they are going to present themselves. So even if a student has not taken the SAT, the student is working, actively. The student would have already decided that, okay, I'm not going to take the SAT. There is a very small margin of students in my school who wanted to take the SAT in March and could not do it. And then, they have, now they're waiting for another attempt, but they're still waiting for another attempt. Even when the universities have said we do not need SAT, they're still going ahead and doing it, because they say, what if this can be used for my scholarship, or what if this can be that one thing that offsets me, or what if this SAT score becomes that one thing that gets me into the university, even if they're saying test optional. So I have been advising the students to write to the university and understand, if should we even submit the score if it is not required. If it is asked by them only, then we submit. If it is not asked by them, should we go ahead and submit? So these are the conversations that we are going through in terms of international students. Coming to Indian students, a lot of Indian students who study in CBSE schools or ICSE schools, and are coming from, upper middle class family, who look at US as well, but their, main focus remains India. They are the students who would apply to India. They would prepare for Indian entrance exams. So for them, one exam less. So for them, it's like, okay, anyways, I'm writing so many entrances here, one exam less. So I think that's the kind of response. But overall, it's a very happy state, where students and parents are very happy that the test policy has been, many universities are moving on to the test option policy, because now they feel that yes, the universities need to see. SAT score or ACT score is not a metric for success. So I feel they are very actively advocating this, and they feel happy that the universities have also heard and are acting and probably, I think, responding to the situation in a very positive manner. Yeah. You're muted.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Ms. Soumitra, thank you, Ms. Pasija. Ms. Soumitra, how are you viewing things in terms of the test policies? I know you mentioned something in the earlier point, but what are your viewpoints in terms of the question hand about test optional policies and the confusion that might create for Indian students, or the confusion it may not create? So what are some of the things you're hearing?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Kunal. So, I would say the kind of things I've come across, even though, even if it was with Greenwood High earlier or with Inventure now, right? So, as you know, there are many universities which already declared test optional and test flexible even before this pandemic started, where based on the fact that test is not just one element which reflects the intellectual ability of a student completely, but there are so many other factors which actually brings out what a student's maturity is. Obviously, which we all know that students take tests multiple times, some students to improve and things like that, right? But though having said all this, from an Indian parent perspective, earlier, before this pandemic had started, whenever I suggest a test optional school or a test flexible school to a parent or to a student, from an Indian parent perspective, it is always there that even though when they say they are test flexible or test optional, am I at a disadvantage, right? When I apply to the university, and how much is a disadvantage for me, and things like that. Those questions, they continue to stay, even though what kind of explanations the university gives and what kind of conversations we have as counselors with them, so that continues to stay. Having said all this, I would like to agree with Ms. Pasija, what she said. The students who are really serious, they already have their test scores, because of which they also have a thought that now the university is test optional, and so the really good score which I have, the perfect score which I have, how much it is going to contribute towards my application, though it's not, it's one of many other elements, but still, which, when a student is having a 1580 or a 1590 score, that is a question which they have. They will continue to have that, right? So, but yes, the students who have not taken SAT till now, they are planning to register for the August one, which is open right now. And the subject sets, in fact, there are many students who are planning to take these subject sets also in October. Based on my conversation with the students, they are continuing to plan to take subject sets for the October session. Though again, many universities have said that we don't need subject set for this session at all, right? Even then they continue to take it, continue to plan to take it. Yes.
Right, absolutely. And Miss Lily, as you know, Hyderabad is such an important center. We have so many students from Hyderabad. going to the US each year to pursue their undergraduate education as international students. I know you have great connections in the Hyderabad area. And of course, you have many students, and over the years, you're keenly and very closely discussing this with your parents. How are you viewing it in terms of from your point? Thank you.
I think overall there is a certain element of confusion because despite universities saying that they are test optional either for the 2021 cycle or for the next 3 years or for the next 5 years, there is confusion as to whether they would be disadvantaged if they do not sit for an SAT exam or they do not submit their scores, especially when it comes to competitive programs like say computer science or biomedical engineering or one of those more high-end programs. So that's a question that's a burning question in everybody's mind. But as mentioned by Procedure and Soumitra earlier, they are still going ahead with the SAT exam, provided they are held in August or September. For those who have not taken it or for those who do want to improve their scores.
Right, absolutely. Thank you for sharing your viewpoints, Ms. Lee. And this leads us to the next poll that we're going to be having now. This is a question that I know has come up with many guidance counselors, students, and parents. And of course, I'm going to be launching the poll. We request all the attendees to please vote and let us know. The question on screen is, will your institution require standardized tests for admissions and scholarship for fall 2021? We have 4 options, which is yes for admissions only, yes for scholarships only, yes for both, and no for both. So I'm going to wait for a quick 15-20 seconds before, of course, I launch the results to all the attendees and, of course, the wonderful panelists that we have here today. Thank you. So I'm going to wait for another quick 10 seconds. Because I can see the votes still coming in. And I'm going to wait 5 more. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And I'm going to end the poll and the results are now live on your screen. We have an overwhelming majority, which is 75% saying no for both. There are about 8%, which is saying for admissions only, 6% for scholarship only, and yes for both is 11%. So thank you to all the attendees who have taken the time to participate in our poll. Now, getting back to the campus, let's see what campus is going to look like at schools this year. And I'm going to start off this next question, and it's about campus visits by US universities. Given the current scenario, when do you envision your schools reopening or other schools in your area reopening this year? And once they open, can you share a little bit more of what the calendar would look like? Would it be expanded? Would it be contracted? Will there be fewer breaks? Will the class hours and everything else be very limited during the day? And more importantly, if you can share, that'll be really helpful. How would travel by US universities and other universities who are planning to visit your campus look like? Will it be permitted? And if so, how would it look like? Would there be a policy in terms of number of visitors or something of that nature? So it'd really be helpful if you can share your perspectives. And Ms. Soumitra, if you'd like to begin, I'll start with you. And then, of course, we can move to all our other panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kunal. Yeah. So again, there is no perfect answer for this. I would like to start saying that because we are having regular meetings weekly based on how the schedule can be revised based on the existing situation and the progress in the situation, right? Because based on the progress in the numbers in Bangalore and what the education minister is saying and things like that, the decisions will be taken later, though we are monitoring and making strategies of how to go ahead and things like that. So as of now, it looks like, yes, August, we are planning to start. But yes, there is a debate again going on. Should we delay starting the classes for a few more months, right? August, even if we are beginning the classes, then should it be maybe 2 days in a week and then rest of the classes online, or just group of students who come one day and then alternate days, the other section of students who comes, so that the social distancing can be maintained. So the policies are still designed and, to be finalized, but what looks like is we may start the classes in August, the regular classes, with certain restrictions and rules and regulations in place to maintain the social distancing. If the scenario changes, it might get delayed with 2-3 months as well. So that's a debate still going on, right? To answer your next question about the university visits and sessions, I don't think till November, December, the university visits will be encouraged. The physical visits in the campus will be encouraged. I don't think so. I believe the virtual sessions will be continued, and we will be continuing to have such kind of virtual sessions for the student, informative sessions for the students. Again, if the situation scenario completely changes and things get rectified really well in October, November, then we may never know. And to answer your question, how the academic calendar might look like, as of now, though we are having online classes, to restrict the screen time for the students, we are having lots of asynchronous learning sessions going on for the students, which is been included in their timetable, right? Because of which lots of academic learning and academic portion won't be covered, even though the online classes are going on. Because of which there will be lots of academic classes and sessions included and rigor classes included when the school reopens, right? So giving that and keeping that in mind, the timetable might look different from what it always used to look when the school opens. So that's what Inventure is planning, and the discussions going on within Inventure campus. Yes. Thank you.
Absolutely. Who would like to go? Miss Lily, would you like to go next and answer about the academic calendar, what school will look like, and of course university visits? Thank you so much.
Right, so to start off, we've just closed for the summer holidays, and we've shortened our summer break by an entire month because no one is going anywhere. So I think parents are also happy to have the kids back at work. So we get back to work mid-July, and it's going to be virtual. For how many months, I don't know. I have a feeling it might be the entire first semester. If at all we do bring some students onto campus, it might just be the DP group, that's grades 11 and 12. But as of now, the way things are looking, it's going to be remote learning for K to 12, at least for the first couple of months. With regards to university visits, I'm not sure whether, US citizens would like to travel all the way to India because it's still not safe. So I don't think there would be any physical visits on campus. And I think that's safety is of primary concern to everybody right now. So the only option is virtual webinars and virtual consultations with student cohorts.
Right. So for Stonehill, things look a little more complicated given the demographic. We have parents and families who have flown back to their countries, and we don't know whether they will be able to return on time. So we do not know that. Many of our newly hired faculty members are from different parts of the world, so we do not know if they will be able to fly because of visa regulations and flight regulations. We are still yet figuring out. Yesterday was the last day at school, so today all the higher ups have met today to devise a plan. But we are following CIS and EAS guidelines to reopen the school. So we're waiting for Karnataka state government's regulation as well to understand how the school will reopen and what are the things that we will have to keep in mind. Having said that, there are some preliminary plan of action that the school has put in place. One, the school will run alternatively. So grade 6 to grade 8 comes on Monday, grade 9 to 11 comes on the rest of the day, like a Tuesday. Grade 12, they have staggered classes across the across the week. So that's what they're doing. We have our science teachers have recorded how to perform an experiment, or give them some tips and tricks, and those will be played when the students come and do lab sessions. Similarly, it goes with the design sessions. So yes, teachers are trying to facilitate as much as possible through online learning and offline learning. However, I remember for us, visits from outside, anybody outside in fact, was stopped in the second week of February when Italy was really hit hard. That's the time when Stonehill closed doors for everybody, and we were given very clear instructions, and there were place sanitization and a lot of safety protocols were put in place. So knowing that, I don't know, but I have parents who have cancelled the sports day because the air quality was not good in Bangalore. So Mitra, please tell me, air quality not good in Bangalore, and that too near Stonehill. So we had parents who cancelled the sports day. So not complaining, but I'm just saying that they are going to be very, very, concerned if the school reopens and if the COVID cases prevail in Bangalore. So I don't see our school opening for physical learning until the number stabilizes, or until we have we have majority of faculty back in Bangalore. So that being said, the calendar and the visits, I don't see that happening until January, February. I don't know, until further notice. And how will the classes look like? How will our timetable look like? I'm excited to know, because with the new administration, many things are going to change. Our entire timetable has changed, and we have revamped the entire timetable, keeping Corona situation in mind. So, which means the time that students used to spend, they had a dedicated counselor time with the students, which has been removed now to facilitate, to compensate for the learning. And so I have like a special slot every day, which comes in the bursts of 1 hour. So I get like 8 students in 10 to 11. I get 5 students in the another 10 to 11. So I'm probably having to juggle a lot while conducting virtual visits. So I'm waiting to see to see how the timetable looks like before we set more what do you call schedule anything in hand. But what I have got to know is what I have gathered, and through surveys, our parents and students are very flexible, and they said, procedure, let's avoid all of this confusion. Let's do it in the evening. We are okay to do a session in the evening, post school hours. We are ready to come on a weekend and do attend a virtual webinar or a virtual session. So, things are falling in place for me one way or the other. So I'm excited, and I'm more than eager to have virtual visits and, virtual webinars and one-on-one interaction on a virtual basis with the universities. We have done it in the past 2-3 weeks, and I've seen great success. I think it only solves a lot of logistical issues, and also takes care of safety for both the parties. So that way, yeah, I think it looks complicated, but I'm sure things will unfold. I'm just hopeful about things to unfold in August. You're muted again. You're muted.
Sorry, I keep muting. So thank you so much to all the three panelists here. So we have last 2 questions for the day, and of course we're then going to move on to Q&A. I know we're short of time. So given the enthusiasm and transition to virtual learning, what type of virtual engagement do you as guidance counselors see as beneficial for prospective students, your 12th grade students and parents, when it comes to interacting with US universities and colleges? And not only what type, my second part of the question would be, when do you think US universities and colleges should plan for these, virtual engagement sessions, especially since, as you're saying, travel in fall will be very difficult? Would really appreciate your kind thoughts. Thank you so much to everyone. We can start off with Ms. Prasija, actually. I know this is one of the questions that we started off with. So Ms. Prasija, you can please continue your point. Thank you.
If you could just repeat your question once again, I have some points that I want to follow up through your question.
Absolutely, I'm more than happy to repeat. So given the transition to virtual learning and the enthusiasm that students have, regarding virtual visits by universities, of course, because, fall travel is looking very difficult right now because of the current scenario that we are in. My question to all the panelists would be, what type of virtual engagement do you see as beneficial when students and parents, connect with US universities and colleges? And part B of my question is, what month do you think these US colleges should hold these sessions in? Should you think they should hold it in August, in September? When do you think these sessions should be held?
Right. The first part, enthusiasm. Yes, my students are very enthusiastic when they see their potential university choice coming and, having an interaction with them. What has struck a chord with, my students in particular, and I speak for that sort of a generation, 16, 17-year-olds, is something that they can take away. They're not interested in big ideas. They're not interested in reimagining education in a bigger way. They want to have key takeaways, what they can go and clearly, implement after the call gets over, or after the session gets over. So, for example, we have had universities from the US who have done exclusive tutorials on how to make a portfolio for art students. Especially with the pandemic, they are not going to school, they don't have access to all the art studios. So how to make use, what do you do at home, what are the skills that how do you upgrade yourself, and what kind of portfolio would we want to see. So that was a very, very good thing. Second, we did a career talk by a person, especially for students who are planning to apply undecided in the US. So what do they do, what is the meaning of undecided? They're very anxious, they don't know where they're headed, so they feel lost. So we had a career talk for them, so they came out with a lot of insightful information and talks that, oh, I know where I'm going from, okay, these are things that I can look into. Coming back, and then now we have one of my dear university friends is also on the panel, is planning to conduct an essay writing a session with our students. So I've already got heads up from my students that they're more than eager to start. So there is there's nothing such as a good time. If the universities are willing to engage with the students when the admission cycle is going on, or slightly before the admission cycle, it really is a boost to their confidence. Also, the students tend to remember the university if they've not thought about it, so that becomes also, from a marketing perspective, it becomes easier for the university to get more applications, because then they remember you. You have the reps who would be doing webinars would have left a lasting impact on the student will definitely reach out to you as to look up to you as a mentor. So any sort of engagement that has key takeaways that is going to help them succeed in the first year of college is something that most of the students will look at, whether it is choosing combined majors, whether it is how to what do you do when you land on campus, or is it how do you make your profile look good, should you panic if you don't have extracurriculars? These are questions that they're prevailing in, that is going on in their mind. So if any webinar or any session that addresses these questions will be very helpful. Another piece of thing would there is no such good time or best time to visit. I think we are more than eager to have you on campus and interact with students. So since we are not able to bring you on campus, we want you to interact with the students and families, and nobody's traveling anywhere in India at least, so they are all at home. So reach out to us and we'll be very happy to schedule something.
Thank you so much. And Miss Lily, how would you view this? Could you kindly share your points? Thank you.
I think, since we are reopening mid-July, I think August, September would be the ideal time to connect with us for virtual sessions with our students. And I think nothing works like personalized sessions with the seniors, particularly on topics that have already been mentioned by procedure. For example, writing the Common App essay. How do you go about it? Or writing essays that are specific to universities. The other thing that has cropped up is there's a 250 worded COVID essay, which is of course optional. So there have been questions from students as to whether they should really do this, and if they don't do this, would it be a disadvantage? So again, a little more clarity on that, because then there might be repetition on things that they want to say in their 650 worded essay, and then the 250 worded one. So a little more clarity in that context would be great. I would also, love to see a session just on the liberal arts program, because there's a lot of curiosity about this. People tend to, even if you're undecided, I think if you go towards a liberal arts stream, that would perhaps give you a better definition of what you want to do later. So I think it would be great if we could have a session on, what the liberal arts program is all about, and what are the great advantages of sort of going into that particular stream.
Right. Absolutely. And Ms. Soumitra, how would you view this? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kunal. So yes, so usually what we used to do is the university visits, we used to do mini visits from August to October with grade 11 and 12 both, and then again after December from Feb, March, April during that time. So this is how our visits used to be earlier, right? So as of now, I'm doing university sessions with the students. I'm organizing virtual sessions with the students. We had few sessions in past weeks with U Chicago, and there is one tomorrow, and there were sessions with Canadian University. So we are organizing it especially for the grade batch of 2021 students right now, right? All the confusions and questions going on. Right now, the university sessions which which I'm arranging, they have questions for the universities which they're asking and which has been addressed, right, which is going on right now. But as Ms. Prasija said, I would say that there is no good time as such, because whenever university writes to us, if there is a slot where I can, fit in the university visit and schedule it for the students. As far as I know that this is a university where the students will be interested to apply and have applied in the past and things like that, I'll be more than happy to arrange such a session, and I'm sure the students will find it informative and useful, right? And to answer your first question, yes, as both Ms. Lily and Ms. Prasija said, sessions on college essays, sessions on UC applications, sessions on portfolios, sessions on Ontario applications. And these are some of the informative sessions and interactive sessions which we have organized in the past, and which will really help the students to, get on along with the application process in their grade 12 in particular, because most of the student participants are going to be from the batch of 2021 or from the senior batch.
I fully agree. I mean, thank you so much for sharing these points. And we have one last question for the day. And of course, we're then going to be moving into the Q&As, and we'll be also posting the counselor email addresses in the Q&A. So all the universities who are participating, if you want to continue these conversations after this session is well and over, we'll be doing that. But before I get to the Q&A session, one last question for the day to the guidance counselors. And I'd like to start with Ms. Lily. If you have one piece of actionable advice to US colleges, something you'd like to see them doing for the fall 2021 admission cycle, what would that be? Thank you.
I think most importantly, what I would like to see is reassurances on the part of the universities to sort of, let students know that it doesn't matter if they do not have an SAT score. It doesn't matter if they do not have XYZ of extracurricular activities. It doesn't have if their resume is not as rich as they would have liked it to be. I think these reassurances would go a long way, because right now there is a lot of ambiguity, and people are just floundering and not knowing what to do and how to go about it. So a reassurance and an emphatic statement saying that, well, look, we are going to be doing a holistic review, and we understand the circumstances that you've been through. So, just don't get anxious.
Right, absolutely. Ms. Prasija, what would that one piece of advice be for US colleges who are viewing this today?
Yeah, so we all have been hit by, webinar pandemics. So we have made one after the other. We are all on Zoom sessions, and we have we have exhaustion because of the screen time. So my piece of advice to all the US admission officers looking to engage with, any school, especially when we're dealing with 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds, I think let's do smaller sessions. Let's do burst sessions. What I've seen work with them is we do a quick 20-minute session and then get them to do hands-on. So, rather than one and speaking and showing them what the university is all about, I think do case studies with them of what kind of application gets into your university and what doesn't get in. And through that, if you're able to talk facets about your university, I think that is going to be a far more, profound effect, leave a profound effect on the students. So smaller sessions, but meaningful ones. Yeah.
Right, absolutely. And Ms. Soumitra, what would your advice be to US colleges who are viewing this?
First of all, I would say, though, the test optional policies have created lots of confusion. I'm really thankful from the perspective where I understand what test optional policy is. With the current situation, it's a really good option which the universities have come up for the students, right? So I would really like to thank the universities to come up with such a policy at this stage, whatever is going on, right? So my suggestion would be, we don't know how things are going to end up and how the scenario is going to change. And if things are not going as planned and things like that, the flexibility in the deadlines of the applications would be a good thing to think about, right? At least for this 2021 intake, that would be a good point for someone who have not taken subjects yet or is taking it later to submit it. A flexibility in submission and reporting of this course to the universities who need it. That is something which I would say. And as Ms. Lily rightly said, reassurance from the university side to the students and parents through emails and through interactions that yes, this is what we are looking at, things are going to be fine. And even at 2021 intake, there is lots of questions that parents feel that how is it going to be really safe, and what kind of regulations are going to be taken by the universities for the 2021 intake or the 2020 intake, even though if it is a second semester if the student is traveling there. So such kind of assurances from universities, right, through in the form of email, which we can forward and share with the parents and the student body, something like that would be of really great help. Yes.
Great. Thank you so much to all the panelists who've taken the time today. Really, really appreciate some amazing, wonderful, rich insights that you have provided. And before I'm going to now segue into our Q&A session, we already have a couple of questions that have been posted out here in the Q&A that I'm going to read out to the guidance counselors. So please feel free to come forward and answer them. And all of you all may answer as well. So please do feel free forward. The first question is by Mr. Brandon Bond. And Mr. Bond would like to ask, are any of your students aware or concerned about the situation surrounding optional practical training, OPT, and the ability to stay in the USA post-university graduation? He would also like to say, generally speaking, what is the South Asian perspective of studying in the US in this era of Trump? Thank you. So this is the question asked by Mr. Brandon Bond. Would really appreciate your insights. Who would like to go first?
I can go.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so students at the undergrad level don't really look at OPT to that extent, otherwise what a graduate student would look at. So yes, it is not a dampener. When we're looking at US admissions in the US, OPT is not a factor that dampens or is a deterring factor. No, it is only at the graduate level that it takes more importance. Speaking of the South Asian perspectives in the era of Trump, yes, they know that there's a lot that is coming out on Twitter, and there's a lot more drama going on in the US because of some perspectives and some opinions out there. However, they also are aware that there is nothing that is coming out officially. There are very few decisions that are documented, and maybe the Homeland Security is not giving out. They are in terms of H-1B visas or in terms of OPT. There is very little evidence or documentation that we are receiving from the Homeland Security or from the Department of US Education as such. So I don't see that being a dampener or any deterring factor to the admissions at all. So yeah, at least to a good number of students who are the ones who are looking at stay back. Look at other countries, in my opinion, because there are other countries who are giving much more flexibility and are much more welcoming in terms of that. So they will not look at a US admission otherwise. So if we are coming to the US, I think it's more for the quality of education, the quality of environment, and I think the flexibility in the learning environment. I think that's what the students are looking at. So in my opinion, OPT is not a major factor that deters them to look at US.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Anyone else who would like to add in before we move on to the next question?
Just a quick note. I think the concern in the Trump era would most probably be the issuance or the non-issuance of student visas for Indian citizens. Since the US consulates are still not open for visas, this is again a big question mark, and there is definitely a sense of anxiety amongst students with Indian passports.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So I'm going to move on to the next question, which is by Mr. Peter Lundby. And Peter would like to ask the question today. I'm sure you will get to this, but in this new environment, where I'm sure many students and counselors are bombarded on email and Zoom, how can we as US colleges effectively communicate with you and your students? Can you share some tips on how we can assist you to providing useful info sessions? So I know we discussed this, but if you can just quickly recap, just for those who are already here as well, just a quick recap would be really helpful. So any panelist can begin by answering this question. Ms. Soumitra, would you like to begin just by sharing a few tips?
Sure, Mr. Kunal. Thank you. So what I am doing with our students is I'm not forwarding them general webinar emails which I'm receiving, but those which I'm organizing or which I think will really help them a lot. Those are the kind of webinars which I'm forwarding with the students, so that the screen time is limited and they are not sitting in front of screens for such a long time, and that does not impact their mental health in any way, and things like that, right? So a general advice would be how it used to be, because earlier, as we all know, universities used to do lots of visits during August, September, October, or during March, April, May, during those months, right? And the webinars used to be limited. So something like that with a particular months in mind to go ahead, rather than, planning and organizing all the webinars right now in this month, which is actually happening with many universities outside, right? Something like that would be really helpful. Yes, I would say something like that would be really helpful. And emails are perfectly fine, because we as counselors, we go through the emails and we see which is really relevant to the children, and then we share it with them. I believe, I assume all of you will be agreeing with us, with me on this. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Any other view perspectives by guidance counselor? Thank you.
I think, yeah, I would second Soumitra on that, where yes, we do receive a lot of emails, but we again filter it out to see what will suit our ecosystem, the students' ecosystem, and parents. But that does not mean that I'm not going to reach out to the university. I generally reach out and have a conversation to understand, if am I missing out on something very important just because the email did not come at a time when I was not in the right frame of mind, or because when I was reading 15 emails a day. So those kind of things. So I try to balance it out by reaching out to see if if what is it all about, what is the agenda. So it takes time going back and forth, but I'm sure it will help students and families in the longer run. So as we just pointed out, smaller tutorials, smaller key takeaways, those kind of hands-on ones will really help. Something that has also just crossed my mind was also maybe universities who are on attending us, maybe if you all are in the same locality or in the same state, then maybe you can come together to talk about what you all have to offer as a state or as a region. If there's anything that the students should be looking at, in terms of sports or in terms of athletics or in terms of opportunities or those kind of things. That can be also, I think that's a new idea that, this just crossed my mind. So I said, maybe I can share that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And Miss Lily, any points that you made would like to add?
No, not really, because I think everything's covered.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to go on to the next three. We have three more questions, of course. And the first is by Minds Admissions, and the next one is by Susan Garcia, and I'm going to club them because they're similar. The first part of the question is, when is the earliest visa appointment any of your students are able to get? The second part of the question is, can you inform us about the visa situation in India currently? Are the embassies open for appointments? And thank you so much. Yeah.
No, embassies are not open. Passport offices are not open. And I'm no expert on visa, so I can only give you very little information on that. But yes, my students have started filing online. Like, they've filled up the I-20, they've filled up the DS-160 form. They're following the US Embassy website very actively for further updates. The earliest that we heard a student receive a visa date or interview was in October, and that too at the Delhi consulate. For students in Bangalore, I think their by default consulate becomes Chennai. So Chennai is only giving February 2021, nothing before that. So if the students want to really fly to US, given that flights resume operations, they will have to set up an appointment at the Delhi or the Mumbai consulate. But again, the situation is very grim, not that great. So parents are not really willing to take the risk of flying to Chennai or flying to Bombay or Delhi for a visa appointment. So that's a tricky situation that is still going on. So under all of this, they prefer to study online and then travel when situations stabilize. Yeah.
Right. Thank you so much. The next question is about OPT out here as well. And we have Ms. Deepa who would like to ask this question to the panelists. Can you discuss the implications of the current OPT challenges in the decision-making process of your students? And are you aware of any discussions at the India-US bilateral level of influence retaining OPT for international students? So what have you been hearing about OPT, not only about retaining the OPT, but how do your students view the OPT in terms of decision-making process? I think Miss Prasija, you'd earlier said, students don't view OPT, especially at an undergraduate level. That's something I completely agree with you, because undergraduate students are more about the majors and, about the campus experience, career opportunity, etc. But let's start off with one of the other panelists, and then of course we'll move to Miss Prasija as well. Miss Soumitra or Miss Lily, would you like to answer this? Would someone like to start answering, Miss Deepa? about the question that she's asked? Thank you so much.
Definitely. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Kunal. So to answer the question, my students, even if it was with Greenwood High or with InVenture right now, I don't think the students who decide to apply to US think about OPT as a factor. It has never come up with the conversation with the students or the parents, right? In meantime, when we speak about it. The non-US citizens, when they apply, they keep sometimes Canada as an option or Australia as an option with the stay back options which they have. And they don't apply to US, as Ms. Prasija explained earlier. They don't apply to US, right? So when they apply to US, they have the ranking of the university in the mind. They know that the university is really well known for the major which they're applying. So these are the main factors which comes into their mind. Definitely from a student side, they never think about OPT. But few parents, I would say very limited in number, which I can count, I would say, who have discussed about the political climate in the country, the safety and precautions which they should be taking with some news which they have read online and which some incidents which have happened recently, right? Those kind of concerns I have come across with few parents, very few parents, where they have even spoken about OPT as a concern and how many years the students can stay back. STEM, do they, after the 1 year, the optional training, is it extended to the 2 years as they rightly mentioned? Does it follow? This kind of questions I have come across very less with the parents, not much.
Absolutely. Thank you for this. Miss Lily, any viewpoints that you would like to kindly share?
Again, very limited exposure to this. Since most of our students are US citizens, it is really not a concern. So have nothing new to add to what has already been said.
Thank you so much. And Miss Prasija, I think your viewpoints were that I think typically students who are going for an undergraduate degree don't weigh the OPT too heavily. Am I right, ma'am?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your viewpoints. Okay, so we have 2 more questions that we're going to go, and then we're going to wrap up the Q&A. What kind of webinars would students like to attend by US universities? I think this was already discussed, but again, you can recap it. What topics do they want us to cover? Any just quick final thoughts on any recap points that you may have missed out presenting earlier, but would like to kindly share? Thank you.
I think, yeah, we just covered it about writing essays. The why me, the college specific essays are something where the student mainly make mistakes. Something to do with, helping them understand the right fit or what are the filters that one should be applying objectively while selecting colleges, something of those sorts. Something for, the sophomores, the grade 10 students, how to use SUMMER effectively, or what kind of the breadth profile versus the depth profile, if they can talk about those kind of things. So yeah, just getting them aligned to thinking about college, anything that'll be a lot of fun. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Miss Lily, Miss Soumitra, any few recap points that you would like to kindly share?
Yeah, I think a little more specific topics to deal with rather than talk about, what the university is all about. I think it's probably more important than ever to deal with, specific situations like how to write the essay, and if you do want to apply undecided, is that a disadvantage, and how do you choose a major? So questions like that to be addressed.
Absolutely. And Ms. Soumitra, before we move on to the next, any kind?
I think most of the topics are covered. Maybe sessions and application portals will also help, right? About, as I told you, UC application, filling the UC applications or the Common App, certain things, mistakes which the students do, which can be avoided. Those kind of sessions will also help. Yes.
That's great to hear. So to all the US colleges listening, the focus is on informative webinars, knowledge-based learning webinars, and not on university presentations. And the final question that we have here by Ms. Jamila Sheikh, she would like to ask, what do you think is the right time for universities to visit schools? I think, again, we went through this, but of course you can recap it in a quick minute before we wrap up for the day. So if you could kindly share, and I'm about to also share the email addresses of all the guidance counselors, but anyone would like to start with this point? Ms. Prasija, Ms. Lily, would you like to start with the point? Ms. Prasija.
I think Soumitra, you want to go ahead? Yeah. I don't have anything as such, I'm just, I think we've covered most of the points here. So that way, so yeah.
Okay, so I think most of the points are well covered. Ms. Lily, anything else that we'd like to add?
No, if you're looking at the ideal time, I think for for most schools in India, August, September would be the best, because in October, people start looking at starting the whole application process. So August, September would perhaps be an ideal time to start with.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So I want to thank all the panelists for joining us today. Your views were really super, very rich insights. Thank you so much for taking your kind time. It was an esteemed honor for us to have you here as part of the Knowledge at KPT webinar series. To all the attendees, as you know, the Knowledge at KPT webinar series is a free platform aimed to share its intellectual capital and depends on the collaborations of many schools coming together. So we kindly request you to please take a 30-second quick survey at the end of the webinar. But before I get to that, I'm going to launch a quick poll about our next topic that we're going to be having in the month of July. And would the US colleges be interested in attending our topic on connecting with high school counselors in Tier 2, Tier 3 cities? But let's not get away from today. I think all the three panelists have done an amazing job. Thank you, Ms. Lily Nair. Thank you, Ms. Prasija. And thank you, Ms. Soumitra, for taking your time. Once again, the insights were very rich, very fascinating, and very detail-oriented. So this is definitely one of the most detail-oriented sessions that we've had. So really, truly appreciate your kind time. And to all the attendees, thank you for joining us. We know it's very early in the US, but we have mentioned the guidance counselors' email addresses in the chat box so that these conversations can continue well after the session is over. And of course, we'll be sharing a recording of the program on our YouTube channel and our Facebook pages as well, so you can view them as many times as you want. So thank you so much to all the panelists. I think I'm going to end the poll today, and most of them have said yes, they are interested, so truly appreciate it. And I wish you all a wonderful evening here. To the colleagues who have joined me from India and to the colleagues who have joined in from the US, I wish you a wonderful day. With that, we'll be ending today's session. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Mr. Kumar.
Thank you, Kunal.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you all for joining us. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.